Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for attending the first ever North Carolina Composting Council's ComCon, Composting Conversations, in celebration of International Compost Awareness Week, also known as ICAW. ICAW is the largest and most comprehensive education initiative of the compost industry, with the goal of working together to raise public awareness on why we should be composting and using compost. It is celebrated worldwide each year with events held during the second week in May, like this one. ICAW efforts also include a poster and video contest held each fall, and that contest is based on a theme. Behind me, you can see the winner of this year's poster contest. The theme was for healthier soil, healthier food, compost. And the winner was Junchi Tan of Singapore. It just goes to show you how this is truly an international celebration and shows that compost has the power to unify people around the world for healthy soils, healthy food, and our beautiful earth. I want to give a shout out and credit to the incredible Renee Wallace. She's Executive Director of Food Plus Detroit, who held the first compost conversation last year during ICAW. Thank you, Renee, for the inspiration. You can read more about her work in the March 6th National Cultivating Community Composting Forum blog by Biocycle Magazine, as well as on the Food Plus Detroit Facebook page and other socials. I want to thank the North Carolina Composting Council for supporting ICAW and now ComCon. The North Carolina Composting Council is a nonprofit chapter of the U.S. Composting Council and is comprised of about 60 members statewide and is governed by a volunteer board of directors. I'm the board president, and I pulled together this week's program with the generous contributions of time and talent of the volunteer speakers. A number of our speakers this week are also board members. The work of the board and of the council is done through committee. If you're interested in learning more, please visit the North Carolina Composting Council website or email info@compostingcouncil.com. I also want to thank my employer, the City of Durham, who supports me supporting the efforts of composting around the state and internationally, apparently. So the woman managing the Zoom room, popping kernels in the chat, who created the gorgeous outreach poster that you all saw, handled all the registrations and all the other technology, including the social media that boosted this event, is Kate Sullivan, North Carolina Composting Council Treasurer. Thank you, Kate. Thank you to all the speakers and to all of you for being here. The way this is going to go is we are going to mute all participants except for the speaker while they give a talk, 20 to 30 minutes. During their talk, we encourage all participants to use the chat, say who you are, where you're from, why you're here, ask any questions related to the topic at hand. And then after the speaker has finished, we will unmute the group and start the conversation. Folks can just chime in as you would in a conversation. We do ask that people limit their share to about 4 minutes or so to give everyone the opportunity. It will close out the session with a few exciting announcements. And without further ado, please let me introduce our host, Christine Wittmeier from NC DEQ.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Let me just take a moment to share my screen. One moment. All right. Can y'all see that?
Looks good, Christine.
Great. Well, hey, again, my name is Christine Wittmeier, and I'm excited to kick off the North Carolina Composting Council's first Compost Conversations of the Week to celebrate International Compost Awareness Week. Thank you for having me as a speaker, and I'm really excited to share with you about what the state is up to. And I'm North Carolina's Organics Recycling Specialist, and again, we'll provide an update on compost-related projects the state is working on. And I am in the Recycling and Materials Management section, also known as RAMS, and that is within the Non-Regulatory Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, also known as DEECS. Our team helps promote a circular economy by providing technical assistance to recycling businesses and local governments, grant opportunities that expand recycling infrastructure, and we offer a variety of outreach programs. And here we have the DEEQS team, and our section chief is Wendy Worley, and we are excited that Elise Treywick and Laura McCoy joined our local government team, and Mark Betker joined our recycling business assistance team. So we just want to put a plug that we still have 2 positions open, or that will be posted soon, in case you know anyone that'd be interested in applying. So I'm really excited that we are growing our team here at DEEQS. And today I'll be discussing past and current projects, partnerships, and then leave plenty of time for discussion. And I've been in my role for exactly a year, and I'm excited to first share some accomplishments from May 2022 to now. So this past October, we had a successful launch of our new food waste reduction campaign called Use the Food NC. The goal of the campaign is to feed hungry people with edible food and reduce the amount of food scraps being buried in our landfills that will save valuable landfill space and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We can achieve this by bringing awareness to the issue, educate consumers on how to prevent waste in the first place, donate their food, and compost their food scraps. We also want to share resources across the state and nationwide, expand the industry through grants, and form strategic partnerships. Over 60 stakeholders attended the event this past October, and we had presentations from the U.S. Composting Council, North Carolina Composting Council, the Coastal Composting Council, EPA Region 4, North Carolina Department of Agriculture, and local governments. We also had panel discussions from compost businesses, universities, food distributors, and food banks. And DEEQ staff also shared new resources that are available on the new usethefood.nc.gov website. And so I do want to show some of those, share that with you today. First, we developed a food donation and compost resource map. And this map shows food collection services, food waste drop-off sites, compost sites, food banks, and then additional compost resources that are offered across the state. And users can select any of these layers, and they can actually search their address so they can see what's nearby. And when you click on the pin, more details come up like hours of operation, accepted material, etc. And we are partnering with the North Carolina Composting Council on the food scrap drop-off layer. So thank you again for that partnership. And this map also helps the state identify where additional support needs to go. We want to see the entire state of North Carolina covered in these dots. So please let me know if you are a compost business or have a compost resource that is not currently shown on our map, and I will gladly and quickly add it to the map. So next we have our, we created a handout that provides a general overview of the impacts, causes, and prevention tips for wasted food. We also have the new website, like I mentioned earlier, that has resources and information for consumers, governments, businesses. We hope to expand this to schools and manufacturers. We also have a new social media toolkit that has free graphics and text that can be used by anyone. And finally, we have a new storage guide that educates on proper food storage, helping prevent waste from happening in the first place. As composters, we all know we want to just compost food scraps, not edible food. So we hope that this is going to be a useful tool for everyone, and a social media toolkit for the storage guide will be released soon. And one of my favorite and most rewarding parts of my job is managing the grants. North Carolina continues to drive economic development through our many grant programs, from community waste reduction, multifamily, etc. And in just this past 13 years, the state of North Carolina, through our department's management, has provided over $2 million in funding to organics-related projects, diverting over 683,000 tons from the landfill and creating 58 jobs. And so the new launch of the campaign this fall also brought a brand new grant opportunity dedicated to food rescue and recycling. And we had a successful first round with $1.29 million in requests. However, we only had about $393,000 to give out. And so we did select 11 projects that were given funding, and what better time than International Compost Awareness Week to announce the 2023 grantees. So the awardees include Brooks Contractor, Buncombe County, the City of Durham, Compost AVL, Compost Now, Crown Town Compost, Crystal Coast Compost, Henderson County, McGill Environmental, the Town of Davidson, and Wilmington Compost Company. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing your projects develop throughout the grant contract. And at the beginning of April for Food Waste Prevention Week, we organized a food rescue roundtable. DEQ Secretary Beiser and staff met with representatives from food rescue organizations to hear about their challenges, successes, and opportunities to collaborate. One action item from the roundtable is a follow-up meeting with food banks and food hubs that I'll talk about later in the presentation. And at the end of April was a very busy month for us. DEQ convened leaders of the recycling and materials management industry in Raleigh for the first meeting of Secretary's Circular Economy Council. The mission of this group is to provide guidance on how North Carolina can create a more resilient materials management system, strengthening the economy and protecting the environment. Members of the council include leaders from across the industry who will collaborate on innovative solutions such as business and infrastructure development. And I just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to Noel from McGill Environmental for representing the compost industry at this meeting. Thank you for coming. And thanks for listening to our recent initiatives. I think this kind of helps set the stage for what we have in store for the rest of the year. And I'm going to describe specific projects, but I do want to mention that we're also continuing to provide all of our other duties, technical assistance, preparing for the local government annual report, and managing active grants. So there's much more than what we're working on now, but I did want to pull some just compost related and food rescue projects that we are targeting. So first, we are working on partnering with other state agencies, including the Department of Adult Corrections, North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Sciences, and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. And for Department of Adult Corrections, we are focusing on 4 pilot facilities where we'll be visiting to explore reducing their waste, including exploring composting projects, either with a hauler and or composter, or determine if there's any possibility to compost on site at these facilities. I think this would be a great opportunity and could even create a pipeline of job opportunities down the road. And second, we are building multiple relationships within NC DEQ, specifically the marketing division. Back in November, Waste Reduction Partners did a waste audit at the Raleigh Regional Farmers Market. And from that audit, we learned that NC DEQ has a produce compactor program at some of their regional farmers markets. So we began to research how can we expand this to all of them, and what kind of relationships can we build, for example, the market staff, local composters, and any farmers that may want to use that material down the road instead of sending it to the landfill. And finally, we do know it's important to build relationships with the Department of Health and Human Services as it relates to best practices and regulations for school composting. Although I haven't had the time yet, it is a goal of mine this year to work on, developing those contacts and relationships. And as mentioned before, we are organizing a meeting in August or September with the North Carolina Food Banks, Food Hubs, NC DEQ, DEQ staff, and Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. And the goals of the meeting are to introduce the organizations to each other, to expand our networks, bring awareness to programs, and discuss funding opportunities, including receiving feedback on how future DEQ grant opportunities can be structured to best support food recovery efforts. And finally, we're going to discuss potential collaborations and determine common goals. And North Carolina has 11 food hubs in the state. And just so everyone knows, food hubs are businesses and organizations that create new market opportunities for multiple small farms by aggregating, distributing, and marketing locally sourced foods to retail institutions and or wholesale customers. And food hubs help grow and strengthen the food supply chain and support small and mid-scale farms. And additionally, North Carolina has 7 food banks that distribute food to hunger relief charities, including food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. And they work with local grocery stores, restaurants, and other food donors to gather surplus food that would otherwise go to waste. And I know this initiative is more food recovery related. However, I do want to mention that many food banks are interested and are already composting on site. Also, our food hubs are a great connection to the North Carolina farming community, that are end users of the finished compost. So both are potential partners for the compost industry, and I'm excited to see how this all connects and intertwines. Next, we are working on updating the 2020 organics recycling study. The objectives for the 2020 report including determining the state's current compost climate, understanding the state's capacity to handle food waste, what is the economic impact of the North Carolina compost industry, and climate impacts, including greenhouse gas reduction and impacts on North Carolina landfills. And the sources of the information include the Division of Waste Management and Division of Water Resources annual reports, because here in North Carolina, you can get permitted by 2 of those facilities depending on how much solid waste you have versus how much biosolids you have. It's like 50-50%. We also will use surveys from composters and organizations like ReFed and EPA. And just want to say that if you are a composter and we email you about a survey, please consider taking the time to complete it. It's important information, and we can use that information to share with our leadership, legislatures, and citizens. Also, the annual reports are all available online, but I'm really glad that our section exists because we can take that, all that information, analyze it, summarize it into an easy to digest report that can be used to inform the private industry, local governments, and composting council. So our goal is to release a report like this every other year, so a 2-year cycle. We hope to have the preliminary data ready in June to share some of the information at the North Carolina Composting Council's annual meeting on June 15th. So please consider coming to Pittsboro for a great afternoon of networking and information. And after the report is peer reviewed in June, we will then publish it on our website and make it available. So we're excited to engage with you all to review it and share this information that we find. Also, we are in the beginning stages of updating the North Carolina Solid Waste Master Plan, and we are actively working on securing federal funding. We are mandated by the legislature to develop a solid waste master plan every 10 years, and I'm confident organics will be a key topic in this report. We also applied for EPA's Swiffer and Recycling Education Outreach grants. Last week, we were notified that North Carolina will receive a little over $612,000 and that we need to submit our work plan by the end of May. So these funds are restricted to developing plans, strengthening data collection, and support for state-led implementation plans. So even though there are restrictions to these funds, I am excited to see how these federal funds will impact the state. And I do want to mention also that the state's energy office is applying for the Climate Pollution Reduction Act, and they have asked for our input related to food waste and composting. And finally, I do want to mention that we are involved in some peer networks. The EPA recently started hosting quarterly meetings, and we're excited to be involved with the Food Too Good to Waste peer network and National Compost and AD peer network. So we want to continue to learn from these other states and also, glean those resources that EPA shares. So finally, we are recently absorbed the Every Tray Counts program and are working on the transition as we increase our staff capacity. I'm including a section about school composting programs in the 2022 organics report, and definitely want to analyze how COVID-19 has impacted the school composting programs. So, how many do we have before COVID, and then how many do we have after? I know we're still in it, but just curious to see how many are still online. We also hope to develop resources and share best practices around school composting as it relates to Every Tray Counts program. And one example I do want to give a shout out is Garbage to Gardens program in New Hanover County. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. They have a really strong school composting program there on the coast. So I know I was a little quick. I just want to say thank you for joining the first Compost Conversations of 2023 and to celebrate International Compost Awareness Week. And I hope you enjoy my update. And here's my contact information. And I'll now take questions and open up the space for discussion. I do want to say too that if I can't answer any questions immediately, I'll make sure to take a note and follow up with you afterwards. So I know I ended a little early, but I'm excited to start chatting. So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Christine. Looks like we do have a couple of questions. One was about midway through your presentation, you had posted a contact URL, and I think it was for DEQ. Don't know if you can dig through and find that.
For the Use the Food website or the
it might be Pat Butler if you're still on, if you want to pop in the chat or even go ahead and unmute yourself.
I logged on, it was something .gov, and I wanted to get this information because I wanted to talk to you about presenting to another group.
Yeah, I think it was the usethefood.nc.gov link. So I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the usethefood.nc.gov is the redirect. So what I'm about to share. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Kate. So I hope that's what you're mentioning. And again, that's our website for our new food waste reduction campaign.
If you wanted to, Christine, the email also could pop that in the chat too, in case people have questions they don't think of when they're here. But I think at this point, you can just unmute yourself and feel free to chime in. I think a lot of people may not know what Every Tray Counts is and why it's a big deal that the state took that over. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Every Tray Counts has been a nonprofit in North Carolina. They've been really active in the Triangle, but they have been working to get rid of styrofoam in the schools and promote school composting programs. And unfortunately, COVID, because schools were not in session, that organization really took a hit during COVID. So we were approached by their remaining board members as to whether or not the state would be interested in taking on that program, just so we make sure those resources that were developed can live on. And they thought that the state would be a good place and will provide some longevity to those resources. So we're excited that we decided, yes, we can take that on. We're still figuring out, what capacity right now as we bring on more staff, but I am excited to, again, at least, keep those resources that were developed online, available through our website. And, luckily DEQ is not going anywhere anytime soon. So we're going to provide that stability for that.
Yeah, I just saw Kate in the chat say, feel free to turn on your camera or just go on mute to ask any questions. Y'all are here for some reason. You wanted to know something. You are hoping to learn something. This is our first time, like Christine said, this is our first ComCon. We don't really know how it's going to go, but y'all are here. I'm very, very curious about what brought you all here. So if you can just unmute and say why you're here, why you're interested in a composting conversation, pop it in the chat, or else we're just gonna be done.
Not everybody all at once now.
Well, I'm with the League of Women Voters of Wake County, and we do have an ongoing program emphasizing recycling and composting. Also, we do composting at my church and encourage members to bring composting when they come, and we use compost now to collect. And we're talking about getting an additional compost bin now that we're back needing and generating it on site. If we still want members to bring it, we need another bin. So that's two reasons that I'm interested in. I've had a backyard composter for, I don't know, probably 20 years or so. So I'm well on the bandwagon, but I want other people to get involved too.
Yeah, and Pat, now's a good time to see what local governments around you are selling them at cost. I believe usually they're around this time for ICAW. So usually they're around, you know, $50, $55, I believe.
Hopsman, I know Wake County was $55 and they're doing their sale here shortly.
I think they've increased since I bought mine 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know the vendor, some vendors have gone up on their at cost price. So, but I'm glad that, you know, they can still be better than 100, 120 like retail.
I also bought a little thing several months ago when, I guess it was Wake County, because I went out to the landfill on DuPonte, and it's something you stick down in there and you pull it up and it, you know, kind of mixes up the compost, but it gets stuck after the first time I stick it in there. The prongs get stuck together. I'm not able to reach down in there and turn it with a shovel. So I thought this thing would be really great, but it doesn't work very well after the first or second, because it gets gooky and it sticks together and the little flanges don't go back out. So it was not too helpful.
Yeah, I'm curious, Muriel, do you use a compost turner in your backyard or just use a pitchfork?
I just use a pitchfork.
Yeah, yeah.
And you get to see her do it live on Friday.
Yeah.
Y'all are a lot younger than me. I'm 82 and it's a little difficult for me.
Not that much, but anyway. I'd like to say I don't need a gym because I'm a composter, you know, still keep it real there. But yeah, I just use a pitchfork, but you know, it can also, I also like to say that you can't stop it. If you mix the materials together, it's going to break down anyway. It just might take a little longer and it may not be as uniform. It may not be as beautiful, but the more you work it, the faster it breaks down. But you don't have to. The little microbes, these little critters that are behind me, they take care of it too. But thanks, Kate, for the plug for Friday. I'm going to be in my backyard talking about my backyard bin live in person in Durham. Yes.
And I see Jessica is interested in more vermiculture. I'm curious, Jessica, are you talking about more vermiculture topics by the council, or would you like to see the state more involved in vermiculture projects?
I was basically on here for the new soil vermiculture. I thought it was today. I think it's another day. So
It is. Well, thanks for joining mine, but yeah, new soil. Muriel, is that Wednesday or Thursday?
It's actually on Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay.
Please
Okay, thank
join
you.
us
It was very
then.
interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jessica. And I'll be on there too on Wednesday. So I'll see you there.
Anybody else? What about why have y'all been, why are you here? What brought you here? Courtney, Tanner, Megan, Mary, Amy, Arnetta, Dawn.
Good afternoon.
Hey, all right.
Thank you for this presentation. I appreciate it. And I'm very excited about all of the presentations that are ongoing this week. I hope to be able to carve out some time on my work schedule to join. I'm just obsessed with backyard composting of all different varieties. I've connected with some neighbors through Share Waste and and really appreciate the opportunity to help friends process their own food waste and support them in their own reduction of food waste. And I selfishly love it for my garden. So happy to learn about other efforts in the state. Christine, it sounds like you have a really cool job.
Yeah. Well, thank you. There's so much to do too. And it's a really exciting time to be part of this industry.
That's awesome. How about you, Megan?
Hi, hey everyone. Thanks for that great presentation. It's great to see you, Christine. I'm Megan. I am the former sustainability coordinator for the town of Apex and the current sustainability specialist for the county of Durham. And so I have lots of experience in sustainability in the local government space. And so I'm always curious about ways that we can either encourage both, our operations and our community to compost, and different access points, and just being aware of what's going on, especially on the state level, so that we can take advantage of any opportunities that come down the line for us. I'm also I lead a local sustainability grassroots organization in Apex, and they're very interested in going towards zero waste, and then of course for personal reasons, I don't yet own a home, but I have a few friends who do and have glorious gardens that I do my own little volunteer hours in. So I like to get my hands dirty, and I'm always willing and curious about learning more. So just listening in today, and hope to jump on any opportunities that we can get involved in. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, I hope that some deliverables from the solid waste master plan and Swiffer funds, some of those like implementation plans that we are part of restricted funds, I hope that will be information that local governments can use and can use to justify, building that infrastructure either in-house or contracting. But I'm glad to see you, and we'll definitely share all the information that we find out from those Swiffer grants.
I want to, two things pop into my mind. First thing is just this idea of, those that have can share, whether it's, a compost in their backyard or a gardening resource, or, bringing the two things together. Courtney, you mentioned share waste. Can you say, where you are in the state, and how you got on to share waste and how that works for y'all?
Yeah, definitely. So I've used Share Waste. I found it through an Instagram composter that I like from Australia. I've noticed that it's really big in Australia and not as prevalent in the US. So I'm in Durham and have my home posted on it. And there are a few other places in Durham as well that accept food. And you can also say if you have chickens and want to accept food waste for your chickens. And I have two people who have connected with me over Share Waste. I must admit, the first time I signed up, I thought, oh, I'm going to get all the food waste. My compost is going to be wild. And it didn't really take off the way I thought it would. And I have tried to use it while traveling as well. So on vacation, I tried to connect with other composters to share my food waste, which hasn't quite been successful yet, but I'm still going to keep on trying. So it's a great website. There's also another one that was just profiled in the Washington Post about composting that I have. It's called like Make Dirt or something, Make Soil. And it's a similar concept. I'd be intrigued if anybody's heard of other ways to connect with people to solicit their food waste.
Yeah, that's a new one, the Share Waste. I've heard of Make Soil, but not Share Waste. So I'm excited to check it out after this. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
And just curious, who's the Australian composter that you're following?
Her name is Compostable Kate. She actually
Oh,
has a book coming out about compost soon. And then there's also a woman called the Worm Monger. Sorry, I forgot who was interested in vermiculture, but you might appreciate her Instagram posts as well, but she does all vermiculture. Yeah, learned a lot about composting in Australia.
It's an international thing. It's what I love thinking about, this woman in Singapore, you know, that made this compost, like composting in, you know, in her garden or their garden. Someone in Australia. The poster winner from 2 years ago is from Russia, a young woman from Russia. So it's like everybody everywhere is composting in some way. The more that we do it, the more we figure out how to keep those resources out of the landfill, the better off we'll be. You know, many places don't have the kind of solid waste infrastructure that we have, as much as, you know, landfills are reviled and in some cases earned that bad reputation. You know, a lot of places just don't have that infrastructure and really rely on systems like composting to, you know, manage the volatile components of their waste stream, not to mention the, you know, wealth and richness of nutrients that really need to be returned to the soil to capture carbon and all that good stuff too, avoiding chemicals by, you know, using compost instead of fertilizers or, you know, herbicides and things like that. I also love the work of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And I think this is something, as the North Carolina Composting Council moves forward, they have a Community Composting 101 that is a course. Is the 101 class is only, it's $100, but you can, you know, subscribe up to 5 people with that $100. So it's really affordable, great course. But then there's also a longer course where at the end of it, it's kind of like a Master Gardeners program where after you take the course, at the end of it, what you end up with is a community compost. Like, it's a project-based volunteer effort. You get a group together. We want to have a community compost, whether it's at a church or in a neighborhood, around a community garden. Under, you know, they've done it in Baltimore. They are based in DC. They also, there's community composters around the country and different states. And I really feel like, you know, this share waste idea, you know, that you're talking about, like, I mean, I have a neighbor that's coming to my compost and dropping it off. And, you know, we'll be talking more on Friday too, but, you know, anyone can compost anywhere. I composted in a little, you know, 4-story walk-up when I was in college, when I learned how to compost using worms, and I had them in my kitchen in a stand-up sink. So, you know, I believe that anyone, so long, you know, there's the ick factor and everything like that too. But, you know, I mean, honestly, it's like, I mean, I feel like, especially here in North Carolina, like, we do have a lot of outdoor space. Like, how can we utilize that? And we just have to share the resources in all those ways. So Megan and Courtney, like, and Pat, you know, I mean, Compost Now provides a valuable service, you know, hauling compost, hauling the food waste. I truly believe, though, the closer that you can keep it to the source, you know, the better off we are. And there's lots of resources for that too. There's a number of haulers, though, that are active in our area. It's definitely room for entrepreneurs there too. I'm just trying to catch up with the chat. You want to take it away, Kate?
Yep, so we've got some new folks that joined. I know Marshall's from Virginia. Hello, Marshall, with the VCC. Feel free to you know, show your video and unmute. We're having some really good conversation here. I am going to post the recording for today, so we'll send out a follow-up about that when that's ready. Also wanted to post the rest of the sessions just in case you haven't signed up. And it looks like we've got a great question here from Jessica. Do you think a compost bin could ever be an option to add to our utilities along with our trash and recycle bins? I hear compost can pile up quickly. So I think Muriel and Christine can probably give some really good responses there.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think right now the state is still working on growing the infrastructure for commercial composting. And so I think we need to first have that in place before curbside composting can be offered. But there is a pilot with Durham that they have some curbside composting that they're doing, and I know they're just starting small and then expanding. So I'm sure Muriel, you probably know too about that. So yeah, I think it is coming, but not right now in North Carolina, like all the way.
I definitely agree with what you say about facilities. I mean, you can't, I mean, I've been in solid waste and recycling for about 30 years, and it's kind of common law, if you will. Don't pick up a crumb, don't pick up a stick, don't pick up a can until you have a reliable market, a reliable and trusted place that's going to stick around. It's not going to be a fly-by-night kind of situation, something that's obeying all of the rules, that's been permitted properly. And so that's when you have a facility like that, then you can start looking at large scale programs like curbside. It's really expensive to provide bins for each household. They cost about $20 a piece for the small ones, for 65 gallon. And then you've also got the infrastructure of trucks and staff driving the solid waste. I'm not providing excuses. I'm just trying to provide context. It's just really expensive. And so, yeah, we're hauling our food waste to a landfill remotely, and that's expensive too. But to, separate that out and have the infrastructure. In the city of Durham, we have a type 4 composting facility that composts yard waste and biosolids, and they have the capacity to accept a portion of the food waste. It's not the entire city by any stretch of the imagination. Some of our math maxes out at about 2,000 homes. So that's just a drop in the bucket. And then you're not even talking about apartment dwellers or, people that, they have different living situations and they may not be able to access curbside. So, drop off models, the share waste model this is a stool that has multiple legs. There isn't just one answer, although people love the idea of putting it at the curb and making it easy. But I can tell you, in Durham, a lot of people use their trash can and their recycling container interchangeably. The layer needed for education around composting so that you're not sending a bunch of trash to the composter too is another issue entirely. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to curbside. Those that are most interested in it would do a great job, but rolling it out like a recycling cart, there's just a lot behind it. The first piece is the facility. So without a facility, that's when I feel like we really need to lean into these individual options. Can I do it at home in my apartment? Can I share a composter? Am I interested in gardening? Who else is? What about a community garden situation? What about a church situation where we can, collaborate to afford a collection service, because they can be expensive and they're not available everywhere. So again, because of the lack of facilities. I mean, you saw Christine's map. It's just like there's these sort of epicenters here and there around the big cities, and other than that, there's a lot of white space. But that can be filled in with small scale demonstration sites. New Soil is a beautiful example of that. I know there are other farms that are taking food waste from small haulers locally. There's the smaller model. I feel like it can create a hub and spoke that, just makes it a little bit more decentralized than curbside. That's a long answer.
Well, Muriel, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head of just like why home and community composting is so important. Like we all need to be working together simultaneously while the infrastructure gets built up. And then while you're talking, it made me think too of, I've heard you say that composting is where recycling was 20 years ago, before, recycling wasn't as well known, but now it's just a common practice. And I really think that composting is on its way to that too. And then I did share where the permanent compost facilities are in North Carolina. And, not every community, I feel like, there's not one way to do it. And not every community, is set up for a large scale facility. So that's where vermiculture can come in. And, when you don't have the space or it's smaller volumes, that's when they can come into play. So yeah, it's just really exciting. And I also want to say too that governments, we work for residents, and if your community doesn't know, if your legislators don't know that you want this, you know, they might not fight for it. So definitely call your representatives and, you know, say, hey, do we have composting? What are my resources? And, you know, we work for the residents of North Carolina, so we definitely want to hear from you.
I'm going to chime in on that. The North Carolina Composting Council, as I mentioned earlier, we do all of our work by committee, and one of the committees that we have is the Advisory and Access Committee, which works on composting policy and you know, working with decision makers from, you know, individual, like small level to the state and national level. And we recently hired a lobbyist, a fellow named Nick Wood, who was the former policy director for the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. He comes with a really great curriculum vitae, and immediately got into the House of Representatives and found a couple senators that would sign an amendment to a bill. It's the North Carolina Farm Act that has a list of products that are tax exempt for farmers. Compost was not on that list, and it is now. So the amendment was to add the word compost to the North Carolina Farm Act. And what that did, it's just one little word, but you know what it did? It opened a door for me to go and talk to Senator Sanderson. His district is Carteret County, Beaufort, a place that I absolutely love. And I happen to know, Christine just mentioned one of her grantees is Crystal Coast Composting, a small family business, little entrepreneurial composting company, really bootstrapping it down there at the coast. I got to tell him about that. He got to tell me about his composter that he just built in his backyard. You know, I mean, it's so exciting. Like, this is, you know, we are at a real tipping point, but we need everybody kind of working together. One of the ways that I met Nick was through the member advocacy program at the CFSA and Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, and they talk about grassroots organizing, where you've got a lot of maybe you know, a lot of groups with their own agendas, but they can, you know, join forces around a single agenda. It's maybe not as organized, it's not as focused, but you have a lot of power with the grassroots. And then they also talked about grass tops organization, where the top, the blade of the grass, a single individual has a lot of power because they're the decision maker. So when you combine grassroots with grass tops, you can really make something happen. So I'm kind of seeing that happening in this room, and, you know, having these conversations, and we're just really opening it up. You know, not to be too much of a shill for the North Carolina Composting Council, but that is who's bringing you this program. So, you know, sign up. Well, I'm not going to steal Kate's thunder, but we have a newsletter and we have committees. And if you're interested in doing that work, please join us. And yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the 10th anniversary of Sustainable Spirits and annual meeting on June 15th in Pittsburgh. So I hope everyone can make that then. But then there's one in May 18th. Again, I don't want to steal Kate's thunder.
No, please register. Thank you for the plugs. That's put the links in the chats, and we'll send a follow-up email to you later this week. So please join us. We'd love to see you there. Anyone else like to say hi or ask a question, share why you're here? I know we're getting to the end here. Thank you, Marshall. I see the hands clapping.
This is as a kind of add-on to what I was just saying, is that, like, that was my entree to Senator Sanderson's office, but you never know what kind of connection that you're going to have with a legislator. Part of the grass tops tip That's hard to say. The grass top tip that was given to us at the CFSA MAP, good Lord, was just call, just email, start developing your own conversation with your state legislator. Like, they're just people, you can find common ground. And the way to get in the door is with your personal story. You know, I'm at a church. Our faith-based congregation is very concerned about the amount of food waste that's going into landfills. Did you know that our landfill is scheduled to close in 30 years? That may not seem like very long, but I've got grandchildren. You know, you just go on. Like, whatever your story is, it's going to have meaning, and you can, you know, write your own, and it can really make a difference.
All right, Muriel, if you're good with it, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Fantastic conversations. Christine, thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you all throughout the week, different sessions. Again, registration links were posted in the chat. This was recorded, and we will be sending that out here later this week. As it was mentioned a couple times, we do have a newsletter. If you're not already subscribed, I'm popping the link in the chat right now. Please sign up for that. We've also recently rebranded a little bit. So we've been working with a social media consultant. So you'll start seeing a lot more content on our Facebook, Twitter, and our brand new Instagram account. So please find us on there. Yes, Muriel, we got it. It's been a long time coming. So again, thank you all so much. If you have any questions, info@carolinacompost.com. We'll get right back to you, and have a great rest of your day.